Hey, hello everyone. What's up? How's it going? First of all, sorry this video is late. I was actually going to record this video last night, like the night before this video comes out, which would be Monday. I was going to record it Sunday night, but I felt a little sick. Like not like sick. I just kind of felt like not well enough to record. You can probably still hear it a little bit in my voice, so I am a little congested. So I apologize. If that bothers you, again, I'm sorry. But I wanted to go ahead and get this done for you guys. So another weekly review. Week 4 now is in the books. And yeah, let's go ahead and get into this review. Sorry, it's late. I was visiting family, couldn't record it Sunday night because then again, got a little sick. So I'm going to start off again. Thursday game up here. What a way to kick off the week, wasn't it? Marshall and Appalachian State, the rivalry game, right? Some great performances on the ground in this game. Rasheen Ali for Marshall had 17 carries, 83 yards, and a touchdown. Also had a 97-yard kick return for a touchdown. So a very speedy back, very speedy player. And that was a huge play in that game, but didn't end up mattering because Chandler Staton, with around 5 minutes to go, hit the go-ahead, which would become the game-winning 45-yard field goal, as App State would stop Marshall on their last possession and run out the clock to win the game. Again, great performances on the ground. Also by App State, Nate Noel, 20 carries, 187 yards, and Cameron Peoples, while he only had 87 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground. So very good day overall for App State. They're able to squeak out a win there. Both these teams very, very good. I expect tremendous success. Well, again, relative, right? I expect tremendous success for these two programs later this year. Moving to the games played on Friday, Charlotte took control late to help beat Middle Tennessee. Some very good plays in that game. This one was a back and forth affair. Charlotte's able to pull it out. They improved to 3-1. And I really do think Middle Tennessee is better than that 1-3 record that they're showing right now. But again, we'll have to wait and see. I thought Reed Blankenship had a good game, had a couple plays where he could have picked the ball off, but again, just didn't. But a good win for Charlotte. Charlotte's been a nice surprise this season. They've been pretty good. Wake Forest. How about Wake Forest? Now the Demon Deacons continuing their undefeated season, 37-17. That final score there against Virginia. A very nice win for Wake Forest. Just great, fantastic. Wake Forest looks really good. Talk about the ACC later this week in the video there, which again, I'll talk about at the end of this video, but okay. Liberty and Syracuse. How about this for a surprise, huh? Syracuse is now 3-1. Andre Schmidt, game-winning 35-yard field goal to put Liberty away and end Liberty's hopes at an undefeated season. And also, Syracuse rode behind Sean Tucker, the running back, 32 carries, 169 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. So a great performance from him as well. Liberty, not necessarily that Liberty is not as good as people thought, but they struggled in this game. They really did. But Syracuse could look to be a nice surprise. I don't think the ACC should be taking this Syracuse Orange team lightly. Watch out for them come ACC. They could pull off an upset or two once they get into ACC play. All right, moving on now down here. The last game on Friday, Fresno State kind of struggled a little bit with UNLV at the beginning, but towards the end, they got it together. They're able to pull out the win. It was a great game played on both sides, but I have to shout out Jake Haener and Jalen Cropper. This is one of the best quarterback wide receiver duos in the nation. Haener, 378 yards, 5 touchdowns, did throw a pick, but again, didn't matter in the end. Again, 5 touchdowns for Jake Haener. 4 of them went to Jalen Cropper. Now, was not the leading receiver in this game. Only had 108 yards. I say only, but 10 catches, 4 of those for touchdowns. Jalen Cropper, you absolute madman. One of the better wide receivers that's emerged this season in college football. Look for Fresno State to continue to be dangerous and to really pose a threat to some of the higher competition in the Mountain West. When you look at like Boise State, Nevada, those teams as well, this team can play. And although they struggled today, probably coming off that win against UCLA, got a little overconfident, but they're able to pull it out and get that one done. All right, that's done for the weekday games. Saturday games. Virginia Tech not really put up the amount of points that you would expect, but still able to get the job done against Richmond. So still a win there for Virginia Tech. Starting to climb back up after that loss to West Virginia. They get into ACC play next week. Temple handling Wagner, pretty easy win there for the Owls. They improved to 2-2. Pitt, after that disappointing game last week against Western Michigan, although we'll talk about Western Michigan in a bit, 77 points is what they hung on New Hampshire. And that's actually New Hampshire's first loss of the season, of course, an FCS team. And Pitt rebounds. They're now back to 3-1. A great performance by Pitt all around. Addison had a great game. There's a freshman running back for Pitt. Name is escaping me. Did not write it down. I apologize. Had a good game as well. Kenny Pickett had a good game. So overall, a very nice game for Pitt. Army had a good game as well. And Christian Anderson had a good game. That's the quarterback, but not a good game throwing. Of course, Army still runs that triple option type offense that we all know and love, right? Christian Anderson was 0 of 5 passing. So yeah, 0 passing yards for Army in this game. But 15 carries, 236 yards, and 2 touchdowns for Christian Anderson. Very impressive stuff. People forget how good Army really is. They really do. People forget how good Army is. 4-0 are what the Knights are sitting at right now. Georgia taking care of business, 62-0. They absolutely obliterated Vanderbilt. And that gap between them and Bama, some say it's closed all the way. I still think there's a little bit of a gap. I think Georgia maybe has a tiny bit left more to prove. But again, that's just my opinion. Bama's been Bama pretty much the entire season except for parts of that Florida game. Georgia has a big game this week against Arkansas. And if they can win that one huge, very well might be the #1 team in the country. But Bama's also got another big game. We'll talk about Bama later. Penn State taking care of business against Villanova. Villanova's first loss of the season. Penn State improves to 4-0. I believe actually jumped to 4th in the AP poll as well. Again, my top 25 poll going to come out later tonight. I'll mention that again at the end of the video. Where is it? There. Flipping the green screen is hard, guys. All right, so Penn State takes care of business. Northwestern also takes care of business. This is a struggling Ohio team. I'm really concerned with this Ohio team right now because to me, it seems like they should be having all the pieces there to where they can have a pretty good season. In fact, if you remember, I think I've mentioned this pretty much every week. I picked them to win their division in the Mid-American. They're 0-4. So maybe they can turn it around in Mid-American Conference play. But right now, they're struggling. They're on the struggle bus. Hopefully they can get off of it, find that bus stop and change buses. Hopefully they can get in the win column soon. Because I do like this Ohio team. They're much better than that 0-4 record. And I think they're going to show it in Mid-American play. But again, we'll see. Speaking of the Mid-American Conference, Bowling Green. I really have no words for this game because the entire box score, the entire stat sheet should show you that Minnesota should have won the game, except then when you look at Tanner Morgan's stat line. 5 of 13, 59 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions for Tanner Morgan. Trayson Potts had a good game, though, 27 carries, 141 yards. He's filled in for that role for Ibrahim nicely. But really, there was no reason to me when looking at the box score, when looking at stats on why Minnesota lost this game. Probably just got outplayed on the field. Or again, their offense didn't get the chances they wanted, some mistakes. Yeah, I really can't explain this last year, but Bowling Green improves to 2-2 while Minnesota falls to the same record. So hopefully Minnesota can turn it around. Even without Ibrahim, they're still a pretty good team. And now you have to think that the Big Ten West is not necessarily decided, but has a clear front runner, right? And we'll get to that team in a little bit. You see him right there. We'll get to that game. But yeah, not necessarily a huge upset, but a pretty eye-opening upset nonetheless, as Bowling Green's able to beat Minnesota. Sorry guys, told you, congested. All right, SMU and TCU, the battle for the Iron Skillet, and SMU comes out on top this year. It was a pretty close game throughout, back and forth. SMU took control late, and TCU just couldn't bounce back. Tanner Mordecai, while he threw 3 picks, 245 yards for 4 touchdowns. So a pretty solid day for him again, minus those 3 picks. But it didn't seem to matter, and I'll tell you why in a second. Max Dugan had a good game as well, 276 yards and 3 touchdowns. Both starting running backs were great. Ulysses Bentley for SMU, 20 carries, 153 yards, 1 touchdown. And Zach Evans for TCU, 15 carries, 113 yards. So good all around running backs. But the turnovers was what really made this game, right? So capitalizing off turnovers, SMU only able to force 1 turnover, and it was a fumble, again, recovered by SMU's defense, and they turned it into 7 points, turned it into a touchdown, kicked the extra point, and there you go. TCU, again, I mentioned those 3 picks for Tanner Mordecai, right? Only 6 points off of those turnovers. 1 was at the end of the half, so can't really do anything about that. But the other 2 interceptions they forced, they only got field goals out of. So that was a huge reason why TCU lost this game. You turn those into touchdowns, you win this game. So watch out for SMU this year. Still could be really good. TCU, I also think, is good as well. Just got to, again, capitalize off those turnovers, right? Got to make the other team pay for their mistakes. All right, Texas and Texas Tech is up next. Tyler Shuck went out with an injury in this game. He broke his collarbone, so he's going to be out a minimum of 6 weeks. They hope and they think that Tyler Shuck can be back to play in October, or not October, in November. Maybe we'll see. But Henry Columbi came in as Shuck's replacement and didn't fare too bad. 324 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 1 pick. The only problem, he was going up against Steve Sarkisian's offense. Casey Thompson, 303 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 pick. 3 of those touchdown passes to Xavier Worthy, who had 5 catches, 100 yards, and again, 3 touchdowns. Texas doubled the amount of points Texas Tech put up. Roderick Thompson did get in to this game and did play. I think had like 16 carries, 54 yards. That was, again, I didn't write it down, so apologies, but it was somewhere around that stat line, some like 15 carries, 50 yards, somewhere around there. Yeah, Texas back on track with a win over a pretty solid Texas Tech team. The only thing they got to work out is that defensive side. And how is Texas Tech going to play now without Tyler Shuck? Interesting storylines to watch. And how about this game right here, the final game of the first column, Missouri and Boston College. This was a fun one. This one was back and forth, just a hard-fought game overall. It actually went into overtime. I know you can't really read it. I apologize, but trust me, it says overtime right there. Bazelak, 303 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. One of the interceptions sealed the game. Talk about it in a little bit. And then Grossell. So, of course, Phil Dracovic out for the year for Boston College, most likely. So Grossell wouldn't have to come in and play. 175 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick in this game. Running backs had good days as well. Tyler Beatty for Missouri, 18 carries, 73 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Garwell for Boston College, 25 carries, 175 yards, and 2 touchdowns. At the end of regulation, Harrison Mevis, game-tying 56-yard field goal at the end of regulation. And then Boston College, first possession of overtime, Zay Flowers, a 10-yard touchdown pass. That ended up being the game-winning touchdown pass because on Missouri's first play of overtime, that was the second pick that Connor Bazelak threw that day, and it sealed the game for Boston College. Honestly, what a game to watch. That game was a lot of fun. So, Boston College now undefeated. Clemson is coming up, and they pull off another. We're going to get to Clemson. Do not worry. We will get to Clemson. I have a lot to say about that game. Boston College now undefeated. We'll see where this goes. All right. Second column time. Boise State beats Utah State. No real problems for the Broncos there. LSU and Mississippi State. LSU was controlling this game for most of the first half. And then in the second half, Mississippi State was clawing back, but it was too little too late. So LSU holds on for the win there against Mississippi State. And you'd have to think that now Miles Brennan should be back any week now. But with the way that Max Johnson has been playing, who knows? Maybe they keep Max Johnson as the starter. Will be an interesting storyline to watch there. Central Michigan beats FIU. Close game. It was a pretty even game when you look at the box score. Central Michigan able to pull it out. Okay, let's talk about this one. So Notre Dame and Wisconsin, 41-13 is your final score. And the final score is going to make this game look more lopsided than it was, because on Wisconsin's last 3 possessions, 3 picks. In fact, Graham Mertz had 4 picks in this game, was 18 of 41, 240 yards, only 1 touchdown, and 4 picks. That's the final stat line for Graham Mertz. Not good. He has not improved his play at all this year. He's been a roller coaster of a year. At times he's looked pretty good, but throughout most of this game, did not look great. He did have a couple nice passes in this game, but again, those 3 interceptions at the end of the game, just that's gotta hurt your morale. Wisconsin drops out of the rankings. You'll find out where Wisconsin ranks. Top 25. Spoiler, they're not. But Notre Dame now. That was a good performance from Notre Dame. Jack Cohn, 158 yards, 1 touchdown. Did go out of the game with a lower body injury, but they expect him to be ready for the Cincinnati game on next week. That is a huge game. I will definitely be previewing that one on Thursday or Friday whenever I get the preview out. And then Drew Pine had to come in, and he looked really good. The freshman, 81 yards for a touchdown as well. Chris Tyree, the speedster, 96-yard kick return touchdown. And again, like I just mentioned, 3 picks in the final 3 drives for Wisconsin's, and the last 2 of them were pick sixes for the Notre Dame defense. So again, score going to make it seem more lopsided than it was, but this was definitely Notre Dame's game to lose. They were not letting this one go. Notre Dame has really pushed that way up to be a solid college football playoff contender. Again, Cincinnati's up this week, and that is going to be a very, very interesting game to watch. All right, moving on now. Coastal Carolina beating UMass, no problem there. Miami, they didn't have De'Aaron King in this game. Sorry to hit my mic stand. But again, no real problems there. Able to get that one done against Central Connecticut, 69-0. Nice job, Miami. All right, moving on now. I talked about Pitt earlier today, and I said I was going to talk about Western Michigan. Well, here you go. Nick Starkel did not look great in this game. And when you look at Western Michigan, that Bronco defense is something else. 8 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, 5 quarterback hurries, forced 3 turnovers, only allowed 119 yards to that San Jose State offense that was so explosive last year, and only allowed San Jose State to go 2 of 13 on 3rd down. Watch out for Western Michigan getting into Mid-American Conference play as well. They really can make a nice run to possibly win the Mid-American Conference this year. They look really good. Team that doesn't look that great, though, is Ball State. And I'm honestly surprised, because Ball State is returning a lot from last year, a lot of their offensive production, and it just hasn't worked out this year at all. And it concerns me, because I think Ball State can be a good team, but they clearly have not shown it. Their offensive struggles are continuing. This is a good Toledo team, I know, but if Ball State could have got into the end zone, they would have won this game, because Toledo didn't play their best game either. So for Ball State and Toledo, 2 teams that can absolutely win the MAC if both of them improve on things. Ball State has more to improve on than Toledo. We'll see where it goes. Toledo wins that game. Another Mid-American team. Eastern Michigan, no problem with Texas State. They improved to 3-1. All right. It's going to get a little heavy for a second. So advised, if you don't, just like skip this part of the video. Like, I don't care. Utah beats Washington State. That's the only thing I'm going to say about that football game, because there were a couple things that happened that were so much bigger than football for these 2 teams. Coincidentally, it happened to be these 2 teams. Early, I believe it was Saturday morning, Brandon Gray, a wide receiver for Washington State, is, last I checked, in stable condition at a hospital in Pullman after he was shot at a party. When he first got to the hospital, he was like in critical condition, but was stable. Now I think he's just stable, and they're keeping a watch on him. Most likely should survive, but again, just a horrible, horrible thing. And an even more horrible thing happened in Utah. 1 year, not even a year. Again, Ty Jordan died in a shooting last December. Aaron Lowe, a linebacker defensive back. He was a defensive player. Doesn't matter. he was shot and killed at a house party. That has to be tough for both of these teams. And you never want to see anyone go through this, but I feel like it was important to mention and talk about here because, again, I'm a college football channel. I cover these things. And again, it's something that no one likes, or I shouldn't say no one else, but that no one likes to talk about. So I pray for Brandon Gray. I hope he makes it out okay. And for Aaron Lowe, again, that's the second teammate that Utah has lost to a shooting in the last 2 years, or excuse me, in the last year, not even a year, in the last 10 months. I hope both of these teams can recover from this. Again, it's going to be really hard, though, the rest of the way, especially for Utah. Again, already still thinking about the loss of Ty Jordan, now have Aaron Lowe there as well. Expect some tributes and things to come from both of these teams for their players that were shot. So, yeah, there's no good segue out of that, but I thought I should talk about it and mention it. Utah wins the game, but again, do I care? I mean, yeah, but so much stuff that's bigger than football happened off the field. So I send my thoughts, my prayers to the two families that were impacted by these horrible events. And we'll see what happens the rest of the way for both of these teams in the season. Again, no easy segue from this, but I'm going to try. Northern Illinois comes out and beats Maine. So a good win there for Northern Illinois. San Diego State, a good win over Towson. Purdue, a good win over Illinois. This was a really defensive game, and Purdue didn't even have David Bell on the field. He actually went out with a concussion in the Notre Dame game that I did not mention in last week's review. But again, mentioning it this week, he did not play. There was also a running back that didn't play for Purdue, but Purdue still did get the job done. Staying in the Big Ten, Iowa struggled with Colorado State early, found themselves down 14-7, and they had to get their offense going. Their defense wasn't doing it. Their defense just wasn't doing it. So 17 unanswered points for Iowa, but only around, I think, here we go, I got it. 278 total yards for the Iowa team, only 54 rush yards. Tyler Goodson didn't have a productive day, and 4 of 13 on third down. So while the Iowa defense is great, it's excellent, might be one of the best defenses in the country. I've mentioned this before, and I'll probably end up talking about it on Wednesday. There you go. This Iowa team, as soon as they face a good offense that's able to figure out and get past their defense, they're going to have to rely on their offense. And right now, I don't like their chances. So Iowa's offense, I still want to see more out of this Iowa offense. You cannot deny the talent they have on defense, but that offense, it's time to pick up steam. You're a third of the way through the year. You've made it to 4-0. In my opinion, not necessarily on your defensive alone, but mostly from your defensive efforts. Offense has got to get better for Iowa later down the line. Game against Maryland this week, and then I believe the week after is the Penn State game. Don't quote me on that, but see what happens with Iowa here in this one. And to tack it on, Colorado State has not been that great this year, and Iowa struggled. So again, we'll see what happens. Well, here's another upset. Iowa State losing to Baylor. Baylor was a team coming into this year that I did think was underrated, but I thought then maybe they were going to be a little overrated because they were underrated. If that makes sense, probably doesn't, but my rationale for you. 4-0 now are the Baylor Bears. And Iowa State, again, the box score and everything says Iowa State should have won this game. Breece Hall, 27 carries for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. But on the other side, you had Treston Ebner, only 8 carries for 37 yards, but 98-yard kick return touchdown. And that ended up being the difference here in this game. Here's what else ended up being the difference. When the Cyclones got inside the Baylor 30 throughout the entire game, 3 touchdowns. Hey, that's pretty good. 3 field goals. Okay, you'd like to get touchdowns out of those drives. But again, you got points. 1 missed field goal. Okay, that was huge in this game when you look at the final score. and then 1 interception. Again, huge when you look at the final score. So in 8 trips inside the Baylor 30-yard line, only 3 touchdowns. That's a 37.5% touchdown rate, which is not good and not what you want to see at all. This Iowa State team probably can end up finding their way back into the rankings this year, but they have to start capitalizing on the golden opportunities, which is something they have struggled at all year. And for Baylor, they're playing some really good football right now, top 10 in a lot of categories on the offensive side. Defense has looked pretty good as well. Baylor's got a good one this week as well. Again, wait to see what that one is when I get to my preview. But Baylor keeps the undefeated season alive, and so does Michigan. A battle between previously unbeaten Big Ten teams ends with Rutgers getting the loss. But this one was close. This one was really close. Michigan, I think the final line was like 20.5, something like that. But Rutgers really did bring it all. And surprisingly enough, Michigan, who, in my opinion, and I think statistically as well, has the best run game in all of the nation, Rutgers only held him to 112 total yards. Granted, I believe Hassan Haskins did get into the end zone twice, but holding the most productive rushing attack to 112 yards on the ground. Great job by the Rutgers defense. They outgained Michigan in yardage. They got 6 more first downs than Michigan. But this is where it happened for Rutgers. Their last 3 drives of the game, a missed field goal. That hurt their morale there. A turnover on downs, second to last drive, that happened to be their 3rd of the game. And then a fumble on their last drive, on the first play of their drive, fumble, and that's their first turnover all year. Michigan still doesn't have one. So that turnover really was the key part that helped Michigan win this game, along with some defensive stops and just some miscues on the Rutgers side. But Rutgers has Ohio State this week, who we're going to talk about down here. An interesting storyline came out of that game, still kind of being developed as well. But Rutgers is good. Rutgers is good, guys. I know. Let that sink in for a minute. Rutgers is good. It's okay. No. Yes, the world is fine. Rutgers is just good now. That's it. I think they can give Ohio State a really good fight next week. Again, we'll see what happens with both these teams down the stretch. Michigan, again, I believe they did. They had more passing yards than rush yards in this game. Their passing game is coming along. Still want to see more from it though, right? UTSA and Memphis. This is a game that I didn't preview, but I was going to heavily keep my eyes on. It was on ESPNU, so for those of you who don't get ESPNU, I'm sorry, because this was a really good game to watch. I paid attention to this one throughout. How about Sincere McCormick, huh? 42 carries, 184 yards, and 3 touchdowns. The ground game for Memphis didn't really get going. The passing attack is Dykes, 6 catches, 167 yards, and Calvin Austin, 6 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown. And for UTSA, found themselves down 7-21. Didn't matter. They rallied back, came back. I'm going to butcher this name. I'm sorry. Duplessis. No, not Grant. Sorry. Hunter Duplessis. I probably not how you say his name, so I apologize. Hunter Duplessis, game-winning 42-yard field goal, and UTSA is the team that remains undefeated coming out of that one. Highly underrated team. Watch out for this team because they can be really good. Again, they're going to start getting into Conference USA play. We'll see how they do. UConn was very close to getting their first win of the season, but they fall to 0-5 in Wyoming, keeps their undefeated season alive, come back to win that game against UConn. We're down 13-3 at the half. Of course, outscored UConn 21-9 in the second to win the game. Maryland is getting more consistent, right? When you look previous years, Maryland through the first 3 games has not been that consistent. Well, last week's game against Illinois just felt like a nice classic Big Ten battle. This one here, Maryland was clicking. And again, Maryland, a big game next week against Iowa. See what happens that one, but a good win for Maryland. Now's the time I'm going to switch. So give me a second. Let's start talking about that one up there though, huh? I know, right? I only have to do 4 columns. Yeah, get used to it. There are going to be fewer and fewer games on this board. More teams are going to start to go on bye week, and less teams are going to start playing FCS opponents. So there you go. Texas A&M and Arkansas. How for real is Arkansas? We're going to find out this week when they play Georgia, but that's a nice win for Arkansas. That was a beautiful win. 151 yards, no touchdowns and 1 interception for Zach Calzada, while KJ Jefferson went out with an injury in this game, but did come back, played the final snap, 212 yards, 2 touchdowns. He has taken a huge step, and Treylon Burks, one of the best wide receivers in the nation, the leading receiver in this game. I believe, for both teams, obviously, when you hear his numbers, 6 catches, 167 yards, and a touchdown for Treylon Burks. Amazing. Burks is amazing. And this Arkansas team is amazing. They outgained A&M 443 to 272, albeit they did have 10 penalties for 65 yards, but I think A&M had 11. But that Arkansas defense looked really good. That Arkansas offense looked really good. How for real is Arkansas? Texas A&M probably not ready for that big stage yet, but for Arkansas, how for real are they? They're now in the top 10 in the AP poll. Again, you'll find out where I rank them tonight. But how for real are they? I know I've probably said it like 4 or 5 times. I'll stop saying it now. No, I won't. One more time. How for real are they? We're going to find out next week against Georgia. But for right now, they look pretty real. Do you remember about a decade ago, Arkansas was a really good team? They're getting back there. They are getting back there. Louisville and Florida State. Florida State remains winless because of a terrific game from Malik Cunningham. 264 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, and on the ground, 14 carries, 56 yards, and 2 more touchdowns. Florida State tried to come back late, but again, too little, too late for the Seminoles. Are they going to win a game this year? I would think yes. But bowl game? Most likely not. With just the way that the rest of their schedule plays out. When are things going to turn around at Florida State? That's the big Moneyball question. Who knows? Auburn struggled with Georgia State. This was an upset alert game for a long time because of a guy named Tucker Gregg, running back there for Georgia State. 12 carries, 150 yards, and 1 touchdown, was shredding this Auburn defense, was getting it close to the end zone, and then Auburn buckled down. They figured some stuff out. I believe there was a pick 6 in this game. Yep, there was a Smoke Monday, 36-yard pick 6. And then Barton Lester, a reserve linebacker, blocked a punt and fell on it in the end zone for a touchdown to help push Auburn over the edge to a win. Now, Bo Nix had 156 yards in this game, but was benched by Brian Harsin. TJ Finley was brought in, the transfer over from LSU, and he got a touchdown pass for TJ Finley. I don't think Finley starts next game, but they wanted to try to get Brian Harsin said they wanted some momentum to get going, right? And it did, and it worked, and especially defensively, special teams wise, they got a lot of momentum off the blocked punt and the pick 6. So for Auburn, not necessarily how you wanted to win that game, but it's a win nonetheless. Talking about this one now. Oh boy. Clemson drops game number 2 of the year. When was the last time Clemson lost 2 games in September? Long time ago. Well, probably not that long ago, but long time ago, at least in my lifetime. DJ Uiagalelei, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. We thought this kid was going to be amazing. He just hasn't really performed that way yet. Last year was amazing for him. This year has been very subpar when expectations have come into play. Both of his touchdown passes, though, were to Justin Ross. Game ended up going into double overtime. One of those touchdown passes in double overtime, or the touchdown pass in single overtime, was to Justin Ross. And he caught another one in regulation. When you look at the NC State side of things, Devin Leary, 238 yards, 4 touchdowns. And when you combine the running back duo of Person and Knight, combined 44 carries, 160 yards, and Emeka Emezi, 14 catches, 116 yards, and a touchdown. NC State played a really good game. They were able to do enough against this Clemson defense, who now has Brian Brzee out for the year, tearing his ACL in that game. And they already are down Davis as well because he had surgery on something. And now Will Shipley, a running back, is expected to return, expected to miss 3 to 4, possibly even 5 weeks with a knee injury. So the Clemson injuries just keep piling up. I believe Spector went out with an injury as well. Skalski was getting looked at on the sideline. This year has just been a disaster for Clemson, but a very good win for NC State, creating chaos in the college football world. Clemson falls to 2-2 and barely holds on to their spot in the top 25 poll as the AP has them rated at 25. Again, see where I have them rated later tonight. All right, going to fly through some games here. Duke beats Kansas. It was an offensive showdown game, but again, Duke pulls away in the second half. I believe Kansas was up at halftime, but Duke just said, we can't lose to Kansas, and then they did it. So beats them by 19. Tulsa beats Arkansas State by 7. A good win there for Tulsa. UCLA beats Stanford, bouncing back after that win over Fresno State, or that loss over Fresno State, I should say, excuse me. So a good win there for UCLA. Louisiana continues to struggle a little bit. I'm not quite sure why. Again, didn't watch a whole lot of this game, but Louisiana keeps finding ways to pull out wins. In a couple weeks, they have a Tuesday game against App State, but I'll probably do a separate video for because Tuesday, if that game is still like piques my interest, because right now that looks like a pretty solid game. So for Louisiana, they got to turn some stuff around because they're so much better than what they've shown so far. East Carolina beats Charleston Southern. So a good win there for Eastern Carolina, although struggled in that game, right? Struggled in that game, but able to get the win. Buffalo beats Old Dominion by 1 point. So again, little struggle there from Buffalo. Old Dominion played a good game, but Buffalo able to win it. Houston beats Navy, a good win there for Houston, as Navy remains winless. And now this one, Kentucky and South Carolina. So Kentucky is able to overcome 3 turnovers, and Chris Rodriguez kind of helped that out a little bit. 27 carries for 144 yards as Kentucky pulls that one out against South Carolina by the skin of their teeth. Rice is able to beat Texas Southern. So first win of the season for the Rice Owls. Louisiana Tech beats North Texas by 7 points by touchdown. Able to win that one there. Florida, after a slow start against Tennessee, able to bounce back and beat the Volunteers by 24. Oklahoma State improves to 4-0, and Spencer Sanders finally had the Spencer Sanders game we had been waiting for, right? 344 yards and 2 touchdowns for Spencer Sanders. Jalen Warren there out of the backfield, 27 carries, 123 yards on the ground and through the air, 4 catches for 81 yards. All 31 of Oklahoma State's points were scored in the first half, and then their defense took over in the second, able to push the Cowboys to an 11-point win over the formerly 25th ranked Kansas State Wildcats. All right, Nebraska and Michigan State. This one was interesting because if you didn't watch the game and you look at the box score, everything is going to tell you how come Nebraska didn't win this game. Miscues and penalties have killed Nebraska this year, and field goal kicking. But Connor Colt made his kicks in this game. So what happened? Let me tell you. So Adrian Martinez, 251 yards through the air, no touchdowns, did throw a pick that we'll talk about later. 20 carries, 65 yards, and 2 touchdowns on the ground, though, for Adrian Martinez. So a good performance overall for Adrian. I thought he played well, but so did the guy on the Michigan State side. Jayden Reed, 4 catches for 59 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, you're like, that's it. Also had a 62-yard punt return that ended up sending the game into overtime, where Michigan State kicked a game-winning field goal on 3rd and goal, able to win the game. Again, you might be saying, well, how did Nebraska lose this one? The Michigan State defense, 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 9 quarterback hurries, and forced 2 turnovers. However, they did allow 442 total yards. But again, penalties were pushing Nebraska back, sacks pushing Nebraska back out of field goal range. You have to think Nebraska's going to win a big game eventually, right? Because they were close against Oklahoma. They were close again against Michigan State. Also able to hold Kenneth Walker to, I believe, only 64 yards. So good performance there holding Kenneth Walker short. But yeah, for Michigan State, good win. You get in the win column, you remain undefeated. And for Nebraska, you have to think they're going to win a big game eventually, right? They've just shown it. They have an identity now. We'll see. We'll see what happens with Nebraska. Alabama was being Alabama, took care of Southern Miss, but I do want to mention Jameson Williams, former product of Ohio State, was a wide receiver, only had one catch, but was an 81-yard touchdown reception. But that's not why I'm talking about him. 3 opportunities on the kick return, 177 total yards, and 2 touchdowns. 2 kick return touchdowns, 1 for 83 yards and 1 for 100 yards. Jameson Williams, have yourself a day as Bama wins big. Ohio State also wins big, and this was like the complete performance that Ohio State fans, including myself, were expecting out of the season. Only allowed 229 total yards, 5 of 18 on third down, and forced 2 turnovers. Granted, they did kind of sleepwalk through the first couple of drives, but after that, they got their stuff together, and even when they put in the second and third strings, Akron still wasn't able to do anything. The offense was clicking as well, even without C.J. Stroud in at quarterback. Kyle McCord looked good, and Ohio State wins the game. But an interesting storyline coming out of here. So earlier this week, Dallas Gant, a linebacker for Ohio State, entered the transfer portal. Again, wants to have more playing time somewhere else. And Kavon Pope, just earlier today, has also entered the transfer portal. So here's what happened with Pope. Pope was trying to get into the game on a sub and was waved off by a teammate. I think it was Taraja Mitchell, if I remember correctly. So Taraja Mitchell waved him off, was like, nah, coach wants me to go in, or was like, nah, I got this. I know what they're going to run. Something like that. And Kavon Pope, no other good way to say it, threw a hissy fit. Stormed into the locker room, down the tunnel, had to be coerced back to the sideline by some Ohio State coaching staff members. And once he got back on the sideline, threw another hissy fit, took his gloves off, threw them into the crowd, and left. Basically quit the team. And it was confirmed by tweets he sent out after he left the field. At 8:16, he sent out a tweet that said, "Good luck to my teammates," and a tweet at 8:18, so just 2 minutes later, a word that I cannot repeat, because again, I'm not going to do that, basically said, F Ohio State. So as an Ohio State fan, yeah, good riddance, go away. Don't want that attitude on this team. He has entered the transfer portal. We'll see where he goes. But Kavon Pope, like, what a freak out. I haven't seen like any video of anything throwing his gloves into the crowd, but I mean, if there was, I think that would be pretty funny. But Kavon Pope, no longer on the Ohio State team. Didn't really play a lot anyway, so not a huge loss, but at a position that's already thin for Ohio State, it's a loss. So yeah, interesting little headline there in story time. Okay. Gabe Burke for Oklahoma, game-winning 30-yard field goal as Oklahoma is able to win a pretty evenly matched game here. 313 to 246 yards in favor of Oklahoma. Third down conversions, more or less the same, and 1 turnover for each team as well. So Oklahoma and West Virginia, even game. Oklahoma wins it on the game-winning field goal. And North Carolina gets their butts handed to them by Georgia Tech, who almost beat Clemson last week. Jeff Sims was fantastic, not through the air, but on the ground. Only 112 yards, 1 touchdown through the air, but 10 rushes for 128 yards and 3 touchdowns for Jeff Sims. And the Georgia Tech defense forced 3 turnovers, sacked Sam Howell 8 times, also while getting 13 tackles for loss. The ACC is out of the playoff. Miami, Clemson, North Carolina, the 3 big powers in the ACC this year, all with 2 losses. More likely than not, the ACC is out of the playoff unless one team looks really impressive and dominates the rest of the competition. Looking at Boston College, Wake Forest, as I believe they're the 2 undefeated teams left in the ACC. So, see what happens with the conference. Again, I'll talk about it more on my playoff picture video on Wednesday. We'll see again, though, right? All right, Georgia Tech, just talked about Georgia Tech. Air Force beating FAU, pretty solid win there for Air Force. Hawaii beats New Mexico State. Interesting storyline here. That's actually the first time they're going to meet this season. And you're like, yeah, it's the first time for all these teams being seen. Nope, Hawaii and New Mexico State are actually going to be playing again. I don't know, man. They're playing again. Okay. See you in 3 weeks, I guess. All right. So Hawaii wins round 1. We'll see who wins round 2. ULM. This one surprised me. ULM beating Troy. ULM actually now improving to 3-1 this year. So a huge improvement from last year, a huge improvement from previous years. We'll see if they can continue it in Sun Belt play. An interesting matchup here, UAB and Tulane. UAB controlled this one for the most part, able to pull that game out. Wins it by 7. Indiana, Western Kentucky, close game here. Michael Penix threw 53 passes for 373 yards, but no touchdowns and no picks. And then Zappi on the other end for Western Kentucky, 365 yards and did throw touchdown passes, had 3 of them. But Stephen Carr saved this game for Indiana. 25 carries, 109 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Indiana pulls this one out and gets the win. UTEP beats New Mexico, a good win for UTEP as they continue to look good. And so does Jacob Cowing, that wide receiver. I believe had 174 yards in that game. Really, really looking good. Washington and Cal, interesting one here because this Cal offense was clicking. 457 total yards, 9 of 17 on third down, but had 3 turnovers. That ended up being the difference in this game because Chase Garbers, the quarterback for Cal, 319 yards, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks, while 16 carries, 71 yards, and 1 touchdown. And then Dylan Morris on the other end for Washington, 234 passing yards with 2 touchdowns. Washington ends up winning that game in overtime. So after losing their first 2 games, they've now won their last 2 and are back to 500. They're starting to get things going. We'll see what happens this point on from Washington. BYU struggled with USF down the stretch, but is able to hold on for the 8-point win as they remain undefeated. Arizona State bouncing back after the loss to BYU. And they beat Colorado, and this Colorado offense is still struggling. Brassard did not get things going at all. I believe only had 34 yards, somewhere around there. So Colorado offense not really going. Arizona State, a good day for Jayden Daniels. Arizona State could push their way back into the poll pretty soon here. Speaking of teams that are already in the poll, take a look at Oregon. Struggled with Arizona for a lot of this game, but Jordan McLeod for Arizona really beat himself. 5 interceptions for Jordan McLeod in this game, and Oregon wins by 22. And the final game that went final, Oregon State 45-27. Your final score there over the now Clay Helton-less USC. Again, it was their second game without their head coach in Clay Helton. Oregon State looked really good. USC did not. Long story short in that game. And there you go. There is my review for all of these games. I know these videos are long, but again, I feel like it's important that I talk about every team. So I thank you for those of you that stick around, watch to the very end. When you take a look at the teams on bye week this week, with Cincinnati, Nevada, Ole Miss, South Alabama, and UCF. Ole Miss and Cincinnati both get big games coming off bye week. We'll see what happens in those ones. And as far as the schedule goes for the rest of this week and even in the next week that I didn't write over here, I'll just verbalize and I'll probably say again. Top 25 is going to be out later tonight. It might be out later than usual tonight, maybe around like an 8 o'clock, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, somewhere or around there. Again, that's just when I'll be able to get it out. And then on Wednesday, so no video on Tuesday. On Wednesday, you're going to get my playoff picture video looking at the teams that are in, scenarios that can happen, things like that. So I think that's going to be a fun video to make there. And yeah, so guys, that is going to do it for me. As usual, I'm going to drop down here. You can take a look at the board for a couple seconds here at the end of the video. I'll see all you guys later tonight with my updated top 25. Goodbye.